Commissioner Schmidt, you may begin.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Welcome to the February 28th, 2022 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held using Zoom webinar format so that you will see that the planning commissioners and staff are panelists. Please note that there are several ways for you to submit comments during this meeting. You may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom webinar by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. You may also send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, I will ask you to raise your hand when your agenda item is up for discussion so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. We also ask that you turn on your video at that time so that we may have more clear communication, simulating the experience we would have if we were meeting in person. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. Okay. Agenda item number 2, roll call. Are we all here?
Commissioner Schmid, we are missing Commissioner Camarota.
There we go.
Everybody else is here.
Okay. So there's 6 of us this evening. Okay, and are there any commissioners that have to recuse themselves from any items this evening?
Mr. Chair, I'll be recusing from item 9C, 1536 Columbus Ave. I live within 500 feet.
Okay. Great. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We have minutes to approve from our January 24th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments or changes regarding the minutes? Nope, looking good. Okay, then do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the January 24th minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Toronis. Let's vote.
Sorry, let me pull this up. Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Foff.
Aye.
Commissioner Toronis.
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus.
Aye.
And Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of the agenda. Do we have changes this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chair, item 9F, 1855 through 1881 Rollins Road has been continued at the applicant's request, so will not be heard this evening.
Okay, great. Moving on to item number 5, public comments. Members of the public may speak about any item that is not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission meeting agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time. I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. Director Gardner, do we have any emails?
No emails for this item. I do see a hand has gone up.
Okay. We have a Mykonos Isaac. you unmute yourself, you may speak. Mykonos Isaac, if you can hear me, you can unmute yourself and you have the floor. Can we unmute them?
Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then we don't have those numbers that you've been approving. I just received the hearing note with the mail, and then I would like to join this conference, and we just want to find out what is happening exactly for the 220 Park project. Is this related with the project? That was my question. Yeah.
Okay, so that is an item that is on our agenda, and that one is coming up in a couple items. That is item 8B, so a few minutes from now probably. And when that item comes up, raise your hand again.
Sure.
And then we'll call on you and we'll have you speak then.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, then moving back to the agenda, I'll close that. We do not have any study items tonight. We do not have any consent calendar, so on to action items we go. Item number 8A, 1315 Sanchez Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand. And so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site? Or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This application is for design review. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing one-story house and detached garage to build a new two-story house and detached ADU. The total proposed floor area is 2,353 square feet, or 2,380 square feet is the maximum allowed. There will be a total of 4 bedrooms. Because the existing detached garage is being converted into an ADU, the covered parking is not required to be replaced. Therefore, only 1 uncovered parking space is required for the main dwelling, which is provided in the driveway. All other zoning code requirements have been met. If there are any questions of staff, I'm available at this time.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions at this time? Okay, not seeing any, then I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hi, my name's Tim. I guess what we worked on were the things were kind of ironing out the extra materials. And you'll see that in the elevations. We were able to calm down materials, make them more consistent, both with ADU and the new residents. We've decided to go with consistent exterior materials of shingles and use board and batten in the gable ends, at the front and rear. We've also kind of looked at scale. We've taken the 2 side gable roofs and made those hip roofs, just kind of make them invisible or diminish those shapes on the side and just kind of have them blend into the roof. And that also allows for a consistent soffit to move down the sides of the house, just kind of calming down the elevation as well. I guess the last thing is we'd like to maintain the 9-foot second story plate if possible, but we are okay if the commission wants us to bump that down to 8'6". I think what we're seeing is that as we pull it down 6 inches, it makes the front elevation kind of more squat than it needs to be. And the hips and the continuous soffit help with the side scale, which was sort of a point of concern in the last meeting. So I'm here to answer questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and see if there's anyone in the public who wishes to speak on this item. If you do, now's the time to raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, do we have any electronic communication?
No, Mr. Chair, not on this item.
Okay, great. Then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and come back to the commissioners. Comments? Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I guess I got to say to start that I'm kind of disappointed. It feels like that not much has happened. It looks like not much has happened. I understand that the side gables have been turned into hips, which is it's not compelling. It's obvious in the pure elevation, but I'm not sure how obvious it would be in real life. It seems like a minor change to the project. I do appreciate the fact that the shingles have been deployed throughout. I think that's an improvement, but I think this I feel like the questions about scale of the building have just been ignored. I understand that the applicant would like to keep the 9 foot on the upper floor, and the comment is made in the notes that this changes the size of the windows, which was another thing we asked to be looked at. The windows have been maintained on the upper floor, and they're equally as large as the windows downstairs. And the point we were making at the last meeting is that rather than equal thickness of layers in the layer cake, more often than not in a building, you would see the upper level being reduced somewhat. So I got to say, I'm disappointed. I think it's a nice project, but I feel like we've sort of been ignored, which disturbs me a little bit, frankly.
Okay. Any Commissioner Gall?
I would agree. I think that there's plenty of room between the plate and the window to reduce the height of that plate. Especially, there aren't any really big windows that would require a real big header, in my opinion. I mean, I know you can use a smaller header for a narrower window, so that seems like it would be an easy fix. I know that there was some discussion about the windows and having them fit under the eaves and all that kind of thing, but there's a lot of solutions with trusses that can be coffered to raise the ceiling in the center as opposed and bring the plate height down. So I think I'm with Commissioner Loftus. I don't see much of a change, and I would like to have that plate height and the windows on the second floor addressed.
Commissioner Fath?
Yes, I completely agree with what's been said. It's sort of, it's just lacking this fine tuning somehow with the windows. And I actually think it needs to be pulled down those 6 inches personally. The other thing is I did notice that you marked, or your landscaper marked the height of the type of maple, or the type of maple name was called out. And so that seems like a good plus, that it's going to help push everything down a little bit in proportion. But I do agree. I think this could be, just with a little more work, it could be a lot better. Thanks.
Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think we have a confluence of issues that we discussed last time that are coming together to create the situation that we have. In other words, we have a 9 foot plate, and then because of that, with that 9 foot plate, in order to scale your windows, the head of the windows then is therefore looks to be at about 7.5 feet, which is higher than normal. And then the windows get taller in order to sort of fill that void. So as Commissioner Loftus again points out, we have the tall windows on the second floor and tall windows on the first floor. So it looks just, it's very static, and it sort of lacks the sort of scale and movement that you would typically have on a traditional elevation like this. So I think it's a nice project. I also appreciate the simplification of the materials using the shingles throughout, but I think that there were some issues that just weren't weren't broached or weren't addressed from the study meeting.
Great. I'm in the same boat. So then do we have a motion that incorporates the height reduction that we would like to see?
Okay, I'm going to make my first motion. Wow. I would like to make a motion. Do I say to bring it to the regular calendar, or was it on the regular calendar?
This is an action item already, so this is.
To
we're
bring
giving
it
them
back, to
their
bring
final
it back.
send-off.
Trying to bring it back with the lower plate height. What else are, I don't know, something with the windows is still not right. Do you think that's going to do it with the windows? And they all look so much the same. I don't know. Just start with just the plate height?
Maybe the first thing we need to address is whether or not that the change can come back as an FYI, or are we going to require it to come back as an action item? Assistant City Attorney, you're nodding, so why don't you chime in there a little bit and give us some options?
Sure. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You do have a couple of different options. I did want to point out too that the applicant does have their hand raised, so it may be that if you would like to reopen the public hearing, they may want to provide additional information about which way they, could prefer, which would also provide some additional insight. But everything else you said is absolutely right, so I will be quiet.
Okay. Before I go back to the applicant, Vice Chair Loftus, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it seems to me, we've made suggestions about what might fix the problem that we have. The problem that we see is a scale problem. So I don't really care how they fix that problem. We've made our suggestions and that may work, but I'm hesitant to tell them to go away and fix your windows when the design guidelines talk about scale, they talk about scale of the building rather than other things. So I'd rather not fuss with their architecture because I think it's pretty nice. I think there's a scale problem.
Well, I think the question is whether or not we can feel confident in an FYI as a follow-up, or whether we feel that it needs to come back again to action.
Yeah, I guess that in fact is what led me to say what I just said is, if we give them if we say bring it back as an FYI, we should say bring it back having fixed your scale, not having changed your window sizes, right?
Yeah. Fix
it somehow. And it seems very vague to send someone away and say, bring that back as an FYI once you fix the scale, because we might not agree with them, right?
But that also enables us to bring it off of the FYI and make it a discussion item. So, Commissioner Gall, you have your hand up.
I think that the changes are going to need to be more substantial than an FYI. I think they should come back to just be continued and brought back as a regular action item.
Okay. So let's hold that thought for a moment. We're going to give the applicant one shot here because it'd be nice if we could get some resolution here. So let's bring back Mr. Peterson. Okay, you're on, Tim.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we are using 7'6" doors and setting our window and heights at 7'6" on the first floor. And we are willing to drop the second level plate heights down to 8'6". I don't know if that could be a condition of approval. The windows, looks like we need to look at further, but we can drop those down 6 inches and still make them work at the size they are. And again, we do have a narrow 40-foot site, and we're working with that. So any direction, I guess, would be my last comment in terms of the next steps if we go to another meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing again and come back. Then I think we need a motion one way or the other on whether we want to continue. and let them bring down the scale, which they seem amenable to doing, and I think it will work out. So.
Want me to try again?
Sure.
I'll try again. Okay, I would like to make a motion to continue this on the next meetings, next available meetings, regular action item, with the premise that they will work on the scale issue, including bringing that plate height down on the second story.
Okay.
I'll second
Okay.
that motion.
Okay, so we got a motion by Commissioner Pfaff and a second by Commissioner Say. Any further discussion or direction that anybody wants to give?
I think
Okay.
it was a great motion by Commissioner Fall.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Foth,
Aye.
Commissioner Tronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Hi.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Okay, motion to continue 6001. It's not really in action, so we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, so item 8B, 220 Park Road. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is requesting a sign variance for proposed signs on the previously approved office and retail development project at 220 Park Road, zoned HMU. The sign variance application includes 2 signs on each of the 4 building facades for a total of 8 signs. Part of the application is a request to approve signs facing an adjacent privately owned parcel, which technically is not a variance, but does require planning commission approval. The applicant has a presentation prepared, so I won't cover the same ground here. However, I will note that there was a question from a commissioner earlier asking for the size of existing signs at BevMo on Burlingame Avenue and the Chase Bank on El Camino Real. For reference, the BevMo sign is 105.4 square feet, and the Chase Bank sign on El Camino Real is 48 square feet. And just to clarify, there are no changes to the building being proposed. This is just limited to the signage. Before we receive the presentation from the applicant, I can check and see if there are any questions of staff.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I would just like to clarify. I'm looking at the signs that were looked at before. So I was the one who asked about the BevMo and about the Chase, because I think they caused a lot of changes to be made to the current sign ordinance with which we're dealing. But I just want to clarify, normally in the height, it would be limited to 2 feet, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so the BevMo was 5 and the Chase was 3. And so this is 2, period. That is, I don't know that this applicant even is asking for that, but I'm trying in my head to picture this all. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Then if we don't have any further questions, then let's go forward to the applicant and see their presentation.
Give us just a moment as we let everybody into the panel.
Are we ready, Director Gardner?
Yep. Whoever from the development team wants to start, you have the floor.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alex Lovatis, and I'm here on behalf of Dostart Development and Saris Regis to discuss signage for 220 Park. I'm also joined by Molly Ricker with Dostart Development, Andrew Turco with Saris Regis, and Dixon Kaiser and Howard Curtis with GNU Group, who prepared the plans for tonight's discussion. It's been over a year since we were last in front of the Commission, and we're excited that we're now at a different stage of the project and under construction. Hopefully some of you were able to witness the major milestone last week as the post office was officially picked up and slid off site to Lot E. Tonight, we're here to talk about signage on the upper floors of the building as we try to plan ahead to make sure it is thoughtfully designed. Our goal is to provide signage that is nicely integrated with the building's architecture while helping us to attract the best tenants to the building in the downtown. As you're aware, 220 Park will really be a one-of-a-kind building in downtown Burlingame. Based on how unique it is, we found that the signage code is limiting for upper office floors and would make it challenging to market the space. So we're here tonight to request a variance for this particular signage in order to meet the needs of these tenants. Next slide, please. As a quick refresher for how we got to where we are today, we worked through a number of challenges when designing the project, most notably the historic post office. While we're very excited to bring new life to the post office, its preservation does limit the remaining area for new development and requires deep setbacks behind it that are historically significant. There's also a culvert running beneath the western edge of the site, which further restricts the area for a new building. And the project itself is complex. The upper floors are office and the ground floor is a mix of uses. We have retail along Lorton and in the post office. The office lobby is actually just off the screen here on the right-hand side behind the post office. And we also have the public parking lobby shown on the left-hand side, since the project will have an underground parking garage available to the public on nights and weekends. Next slide, please. While working through these challenges, we received some great feedback from the Planning Commission, which helped shape the building into its current design. With such a prominent location in the center of downtown, where it'll help anchor the new town square, we were encouraged to be more bold in the design to make this an extraordinary building. The design was ultimately approved with a historic variance to exceed the downtown height limits, resulting in a unique building given its height and scale. As you can see, the architecture is taller than nearby buildings, but sculpted with terrace setbacks all the way up to create a special building that will be a legacy in the core of downtown and an integral part of the new town square. Next slide, please. Here you can see the Park and Lorton frontages, where the current 24-foot height limit generally works great for the ground floor retail tenants and will provide good visibility for pedestrian traffic. But between the retail signage, signage for the parking garage, and signage for the public parking lobby, it's challenging to find additional room for office signs. If we try to squeeze additional office signage into this area, it would become overwhelming and wouldn't work well with the architecture. As we market the office space, it's important to be able to provide signage that can be used for brand identity for employees and customers and provide a strong connection to the building and location. In some cases, signage can be the deciding factor in whether or not a company chooses to lease a space. So our ability to provide those tenants with exterior signage will be key to being able to attract the best companies to the building in the downtown. To that end, GNU developed a plan for the office floors that we believe is appropriate for the building's architecture while meeting the needs of these tenants. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dixon to talk through the design.
Thanks, Alex. And as Alex mentioned, New Group has served as a signage consultant for this project, and we've worked very closely with Dostart and Saris Regis, as well as the project architect, KSH. And I guess next slide. What we've done is we've worked very closely, and we feel that we've thoughtfully placed and designed these exterior signs to represent tenants. And as we all know, the success of this project is obviously attracting the right, as Alex had mentioned, the right companies to come here, make it be their home and what have you. And oftentimes that allows them to have brand identification on architecture. And that's really what we want to present to you tonight, as you've seen in the presentation prior to this. So there's really 8 locations that we want to review with you. We're going to show you some renderings, and then we're going to go through the key variances that are a part of this. So before I do, one of the things I want to do very quickly is just describe what it is that we're talking about. When we're talking about tenant identification, we're talking about sign elements that once again have been thoughtfully integrated into the facades of the architecture. These are going to be fairly shallow sign bands that will allow a tenant to apply a dimensional illuminated identification. So with that, what I'm going to do is let's just roll through the rendering. So next slide. We're starting off across the street on Park Road, looking across to the project for locations 1 and 2. And as we go through this, and that was an interesting point earlier where we're talking about what are square footages of, I believe, Bevmo and Citibank. So we've included the square footage in these so you can have an understanding of relationship. But again, across the street, Park Road, looking up at the project on the southwest facade, those are the 2 locations. Next slide. Here we are. We've jumped across. We're on Lorton Avenue, across the street, looking. I believe we're looking south, really, at the northeast facade, and again, making sure that the tenant identification really is separated from the great dynamic environment that's been created more at the pedestrian level, that type of thing. Next slide. Now we're down from the project. I believe we're kind of looking north at the southeast facade on Howard Avenue here, these 2 particular locations. Next slide. And then this is an interesting view here. We are now standing in the town square, looking up at the building at these 2 particular locations, 7 and 8. And I believe those are all the renderings that we developed at this point. So next slide. What we want to talk about are the variances that were requested. And again, a lot of this has to do with this idea of being able to keep tenant identification separated from what's going on at the pedestrian base. But it all starts with exceeding what is allowed, which is the 24-foot height. Again, very unique building, very unique project for the downtown area. It's requiring us to bring that identification up higher onto the architecture. And again, I think in some of the renderings, and we'll go back to them, we've taken a lot of care to make sure that we position these things, or excuse me, these elements in areas. We haven't gone right to the top of the building. We've brought it down a bit, and also taken the care to make sure that they're not, interfering with tenant terraces, things like that. So next slide. Again, this idea of exceeding the 60-foot envelope, a lot of this now is based on heights and visibility. And also, I think a lot of this really is driven by us letting the architecture drive a bit of the design, really making sure that these signs integrate well into each of the envelopes. So again, 60 square foot envelope, ours range anywhere from 68 to 95 square feet, depending on the size of the window base. So next slide. And this was interesting. This was brought up earlier too. Again, what we're dealing with based on architecture is we're dealing with a very clean, clear sign band that again integrates well into the window bays. And that dictates a 3-foot tall sign panel by the width. And then really we're governing it by a 2-foot height of whatever the brand will be. And again, I think one of the things that probably we all understand are, not all brands are created equally. So this is a good way of really keeping those tenants with a proper amount of size for their particular brands, logos, or names, what have you. And it's to be said that also 67% is proposed at the moment, but within the updated code limit of 75%. And then next slide. Again, one of the comments is, don't want to cover up architectural features. So I think what we're trying to show here is the ability, showing really the details that would be potentially covered up. And so really the idea would be, we really want these cabinets, as I mentioned before, very shallow, thin, probably colored the same color as the architecture itself, and letting the brand express themselves as they need to. So that's really a rundown of the 4 requested variances that we have. And if we go to the next slide, what we've tried to do is at least consolidate all this information so we can talk about it. And certainly if you have questions, we can begin to address those.
Okay, do we have any other persons talking during the presentation? Or are you guys ready for your questions? Okay.
Ready.
Okay, then go ahead and bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioner Pfaff.
Hi there. More than anyone, I want this project to really be great, and it looks like it's headed that way. I'm very nervous about the signage, and it has more to do with I think I'm understanding that legally, you as a property owner, you cannot determine how these are going to look. You're providing a space and an allowable size, but each firm is allowed to do what they want. So there's not really a unifying theme, or I mean, it looks unifying on your slideshow right now because you have no choice. You're showing us just with letters and a theme. But the reality is these are going to be in, from your description, it looks like boxes, and the boxes are quite, substantial. And part of the reason why we reassessed the signage limits was because these big boxes, I'm saying boxes, that's not really the right name, but I think you know what I mean, were being created. And I mean, they look really, they can look really tacky if the proportions are wrong. And I understand you're trying to make them work, and you're trying to use a size where in the worst case, the lettering or whatever it is will still be visible. But I do think it has a fairly good chance of taking away this beautiful aesthetic that you have. So before you answer, I just wanted to say, I went back to 2015 and looked at, I think what was probably the first variance request that we had on another large building. It was 350 Primrose, which is the old Crocker Bank building. It's probably about 85 feet tall because that was allowed then. So it's getting close to your size. Their request, it was Anderson Huang, it's the law firm there, Horn. They wanted a bit more height in their, they didn't want to use a cabinet, but they wanted a bit more height than what was allowed. And the way they got around it was they used beautiful bronze backlit channeled lettering, and it just looks super. And the commission, it was a split commission then, but they did allow them to have a few more inches because these the lettering really was clean and really cleaned it up, and it looked beautiful. So I guess it's a long way of saying, because you have no control over what actually each design is going to be, because you don't know your tenants, I'm just a little concerned about going in the direction of a variance when then we're going to hear it from every other tall building. They got to do a cabinet. Why can't we? And so I'm just saying, this is what I'm worried about. And what do you feel? Do you feel you have any control over what will be affixed to that building? Can you say no cabinets allowed? Can they do another technique for their logo or et cetera? So sorry it took so long.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your comments and questions. And I just wanted to clarify that our intent with the cabinets is really to fully integrate the signage into the property. And we expect that the signage would actually be fairly consistent throughout the building on these 8 signs. And while the tenant names themselves would be different, depending on who the major tenants are within the property, which at this point, we don't know who they're going to be. The signs themselves should look fairly consistent. There might be different typefaces and obviously different names on the signs, but the cabinets would be color matched to the adjacent facades in the building. And they should look, the goal at least is for them to look fairly consistent there. So Dixon, I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add on that.
No, I think you answered that really well, and just I think we should try to step away from the term cabinet, because this really isn't. When I think of a cabinet, I think of the old school cabinets that are really deep and they had fluorescence in them. We're really talking about more of a sign panel. Technology nowadays, LEDs, things do not need to be deep. They do not need to be of a cabinet per se. So it's really more of a thin sign panel that will allow to be that band, that consistent, clean band that will allow the tenants to apply their brand consistently.
Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, well, I'm going to dig into this. Unfortunately, you guys used the word cabinet in your drawing, so you have to suffer the consequences of having chosen that word.
Sure.
I wanted to dig into that because I want to understand it. I've never heard of signage cabinets before. And use the term that you said these are fairly shallow. How shallow is fairly shallow?
Yeah. So nowadays, typically, anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches deep is a good starting
point. It really is shallow then.
Oh, I mean, and that's why panel, but oftentimes we'll use the term cabinet because it's fabricated. It needs to have things inside it. But whereas panel makes it feel like it's just a thin.
Well, again, you chose the word, not me. I just wanted to make sure I understood the word.
Yeah. Thanks.
And so let me dig into what the thinking behind this is, and help me understand the thinking behind it. It looks to me like what you're trying to do is to provide the cabinet itself, or the panel itself, is simply housing the lighting that is going to provide the backlighting for the tenant signage, whatever it looks like. Mm-hmm. And it'll allow electric wires to run through it and all of that stuff. And you can get shallow LEDs. That all makes sense. And it also provides a surface for the signage to be mounted to, I presume. So you're not, rather than in a more typical way to do this, or a very typical way to do this would be pin signage, right? You see that a lot. And what you're doing instead is, instead of putting pin signage into GFRC or some other substrate, you're mounting the panel to the substrate itself and then mounting the signage to that. Yep. And that presumably allows it's a field of composition for the tenant signage, really. And also, it looks to me like the intention is that you're because it's painted out as the same as the architecture, it's trying to pretend that it's the architecture, even though it's not. So you're trying to make it go away, and it's spanning, nearly a full column width. It looks like to me, it's spanning column to column over a false column. There's a central column, but it's spanning almost column to column, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but not quite column to column. Okay, I think I understand what you're doing now. Okay. That's all. I just had some questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for those questions.
Commissioner Say.
Thank you. I'm just going to take it back to some more just simple questions. How did you determine 8 different locations or 8 different signs around the building?
Yeah, as I had mentioned, this has been a journey of collaborating with the team, specifically, the architect, to really take a look at each one of the building elevations and really determining what would be the optimal 2 locations per side, per elevation, that we could work within to designate an opportunity for tenant identification. Did that answer your question?
I think so. So if there was one tenant taking the entire building, you would have 8 signs for this one tenant, or would it be down to 1 or 2, 1 on each side, or 4 or something like that? Does that
No,
change
it would be
depending
less
on-
than 8 per, it'd be no more than one per frontage if it were a single tenant for the whole building.
And then if you had more than 8 tenants on the other end, what would you do in that case?
So in that case, then some of those tenants would not have the eyebrow signage, some of the exterior building signage. So they may have some smaller signage in the lobby or elsewhere, but some of those tenants would not have signage up above in the building.
Did you look at some other, I mean, we're only looking at one proposal here. Did you look at any other, I'm sorry, I haven't studied signage and have any background at all in signage. So is there a way to do it where there is kind of a panel of a list of tenants that's in one location per elevation or anything like that? Is that, you know, not an industry standard? Again, I have no background in signage on buildings, but were there any other, you know, forms of signage that you explored?
We did not look at that. Again, kind of going back to what the ethos of the project was for us, it was really how do we take this unique architecture, not interrupt it too much, not you know, apply something that would be out of scale or out of tune with the design overall that's been developed. So really trying to have an impact for these tenants without, you know, impacting the architecture in a fashion that would, you know, really not be scaled correctly. I think in objects like that, oftentimes you're having to create even more scale, and you know, you're going to interrupt the architecture even further sometimes. So we kind of felt that was really not the way to go, but to really focus in on how to integrate them in a fashion to where it doesn't, again, I keep using the term interrupting the architecture too much.
Do you feel that without this type of signage around the building that you wouldn't be able to attract tenants to this building?
I can take that. I think it'd be challenging if we weren't able to have any signage along these lines. Because at this point, we don't really know who the ultimate tenants are going to be, whether it's a single tenant or multiple tenants per floor. But having signage, which is very important for certain tenants, would certainly give us the best chance at attracting the best tenants to the property.
Okay, and then just one last question, just so I understand what's being proposed. So if there were 8 different tenants with 8 different signs, there is an overall unifying color, it sounds like, and there may be different font styles and such, but is there just one color signage around the building, or could we possibly have a red sign and a blue sign and gold sign?
So as of now, the cabinet itself or the panel behind would be color matched with the building, and that could really go either way for whether it be a single color for all of the signs, whether they would all be silver, or whether it be specific to an individual tenant. And so I think there could be a scenario where there would be a couple different colors that are on the building in different locations. But the idea would be that they would be well integrated into the architecture with the background cabinets matching the adjacent columns.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just say, you know, we started with the more typical pin mounted signage that, you know, Vice Chair Loftus went to. We've done that all on a lot of buildings. Just given the detailing of the GFRC panels, trying to fit letters inside of that was starting to look messy, which is how we came up with the panel idea. Again, the panel will, regardless of what tenant sign is on it, will be the same color as the background precast. And it's the letters or logos on it that could vary depending on what tenants come to the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do have some questions. So the letters, are they illuminated? They're not illuminated? Are they illuminated from the cabinet?
They would be illuminated.
How?
I think there's a couple different options, but more often than not, at this height and this scale, you want them to be face illuminated. So therefore, you would have a letter form that is opaque on its returns, but the face itself of the letter form will illuminate. There's also opportunity to potentially halo illuminate, which is another option to go down. A lot of times we'll use that at lower heights on architecture due to readability and that type of thing.
Okay, so the cabinet face, it doesn't light up, right?
No.
Okay, so then you're going to run power out to the letters. And you're either going to do a Casacryl or something like that that enables it to be dark during the day, lit at night, and you're going to push the light through the letter, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just looking at the elevations right now, it seems to me the cabinet destroys the head of that column. I do not even begin to envision how the cabinet is going to match with the GFRC. And when the person takes out the cabinet to put in the next sign, the cabinet's destroyed anyway. So to me, it would make more sense to somehow work with the materials that you already are using in the building as a face to a cabinet that gets removed each time you change signs. I am very concerned about red, blue, green, purple, 8 different fonts. You know, I think Tenant looks great in the font that you chose, but that's not what we're going to get. So it seems to me like we're lacking a little bit of what would be a signage program here that we can approve. The locations seem fine to me, other than that I think it's messing up the rhythms that are in those bays. So I'm not seeing it as a huge plus at the moment for you. So let's go. I guess I've finished my questions, I guess, and I've moved on to my analysis. So sorry about that. So I'm going to call on Commissioner Tronis, who's got his hand up.
Yeah, just one quick question of staff in regards to what Chair Schmidt was just talking about. Am I correct in recalling or understanding that typical signage submittals or signage applications don't come before the Planning Commission? This is before us because of the variance, is my understanding. And so typically we don't comment on colors and fonts and all of those things. If something falls within the ordinances, the signage just gets installed, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The reason this is before the Planning Commission is that the request is to deviate from those standards. If they were to just go by the standards in the sign code, this would not come to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then why don't we go ahead and, Commissioner Fobb?
Sorry, just one quick question because I forgot to ask before. So it's a variance. So let's just say whatever we work out, there's a variance. So let's just say this and that tenant leave, maybe you sell the building. I don't know. Any number of things can happen. But I believe, not sure, but I believe the variance is usually negotiated with the building. I mean, like the sign. So if things change, the next people can come and install their signage there as well. So the variance, that size that you're asking for, right, that they get to continue using it. So this is like permanent, I think. Once something like this has been decided, unless we're able to put conditions on it, and I don't know how that works, I think it stays. So that is another issue, another question I have of staff, like, how can this be controlled? So, because again, I'm looking at bigger buildings. I'm looking at the Dewey buildings. There's 2 huge buildings. They're nearly as tall. So he might be coming along and asking for the same thing. So anyway, thank you.
That is correct. So variance runs with the land and with the project. So provided any future signage were to conform to the dimensions that are outlined in this application, we're really not in the business of controlling what is in that signage. And in fact, we don't want to be restricting content. So we're really looking at the shape and the placement of signage, and then that does stay with the building. Should somebody want to, they are not obligated to, of course, put in signage in the future, but they would have that right should the variance be approved.
Okay. Vice Chair Loftus?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. So I want to make sure I understand what's in our purview. The variances are about heights, and but there is the question of whether the sign obscures the architecture, which sounds to me like almost like design review. So what exactly are we being asked to? I have different opinions about the height and the matters around design review. So what's in our purview here?
Sure. So it's the purview is the placement of the signage, and that refers to both the location on the building, which is typically higher up than what the sign code would normally allow, and then also the placement as it could be considered to be covering up architectural features. The sign code generally does not want signage to cover up architectural features. But in this application, there is the case is being made that the design of the building makes that standard hard to meet. So it's pretty much impossible to put the signage on without covering up some architectural features.
Well, that's in fact why I'm following up with this question, is that I don't believe that that's the case. I believe the decision that's been made, what I'm going to argue is very much like Chair Smith's argument in a minute, that the decision that has been made about the type of signage is in fact is what's going to cover up the architectural features and not the placement of it. It's very clear you could do something without covering up the features in that same location, but they've chosen a sign design that I don't think does that. And so I'm going to make that argument, and I just want to make sure that's in our purview. If all I can say is, yeah, put it that height, and whatever you do, good luck to you not covering up the features. I feel hemmed in here, I guess, is the problem. Because I think there's other solutions in the same location that won't have the deleterious effect that these will.
Certainly.
Okay. Commissioner Say?
Yes, just a couple more follow-up questions. So in the examples that we see, ABC company, ABCD company, the idea is that a company name would be on the signage. And I'm wondering, per one of your variances, which is about exceeding the 55% of the vertical dimension of the sign band, what happens in the case of a company that simply wants to be identified by a logo? And a logo being much smaller wouldn't read as well, certainly in kind of a horizontal band format, would want to be even taller. And how does that affect any architectural features?
I can jump in on that. I think, thank you for your question. I think if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking what happens in the situation where we have a tenant who might want to come in and exceed the 24 inches that's currently being proposed in the plans. Right now, we're showing 3 feet in height for the band, and then requesting that the signage itself would be 2 feet in height. So it takes up 67% over that 55%. And so I think in a situation where a tenant might think that it makes sense for them to have a sign that's larger than that, then it would be up to the tenant or us to then come before the planning commission again to request another variance for that particular situation.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just wondering if you have thought through different renditions of how companies want to be represented. Some want to be the name, some want to be a big logo, and how the size of a logo, varies from just text. And so how that might be addressed on your building. So that was what I was trying to get at. And then its second question is, I don't know if it was mentioned in the presentation about the 2 wall signs that are abutting the neighbor, the adjacent parcel. Is that on the south side? Must be the south side. And how is that, if at all, affecting that neighbor, your signage locations?
Given the current heights that are proposed and the overall height of the building, those signs would be installed above the current height limits in the area. And so our intent would be that it would not impact the neighbor because it would be above what is currently developed on those sites.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dahl.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to staff on Vice Chair Loftus's question about what we're looking at. We are also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're also looking at the overall size of the sign. Is that correct?
That's right. It's the placement and the size. So it's although you're not looking at letters specifically or content, it is the size of the panel, cabinet panel, and then the placement as well.
But that is a variance request for the size as well.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we might be done with questions. Okay, with that, then I'll go ahead and go to the public and see if there's anybody who wishes to comment at this time. If you do, now's the time to raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any hands. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and come back to the commissioners. Vice Chair Loftus.
Okay, now I'll make my argument not in the form of a question. Sorry about that. So I have no problem with the height of these signs. So I think that's fine. What I have a problem with is I think that there's as Chair Smith said, the top of these columns has just been utterly obliterated in between, the full column span. The intermediate column's just been obliterated by a homogeneous painted surface, essentially. And the architectural detail has been lost. And what makes that important is that this is the entablature of the columnar structure. It's the very top of the columns that had the decision been made to not push long ago, to not push those spandrels back and recess the spandrels from the columns, then this sign might have been just fine, because it would have been at the surface and there would have been a continuous entablature instead of the recesses of the spandrels in between the tops of the columns. But this fundamentally alters the architecture of the building, in my view. I think it's really instructive. On sheet 301, it's very instructive to look at the various types of examples that are given to us. DBO Partners and Biogen are 2 examples of spandrels with homogeneous painted surfaces mounted on top of, the architecture. One of them doesn't matter too much. The brick scale is so small that the homogeneous surface, if it were the same color, wouldn't make that much difference. The Biogen example is a really bad example of something that was purporting to be a stone, stone veneer, may actually be stone, but and it's just been covered up, just clumsily covered up, in my view. The 2 examples that I think work are the top ones, DPAC, and the bottom one, United Bank. United Bank is mounted on a bar, it looks like, and the bar pushes the pushes the letters forward of the surface itself, and you can register the surface passing behind the letters, and that doesn't harm the architecture that much. It allows the architecture to be the architecture and the sign to be the sign. And the DPAC is, I think, an even better one. There you've got a panel that is not a big panel, but it's not spanning 30 feet or 26 feet. And the letters are clearly mounted on some kind of frame. They're pin mounted to a frame behind it. And so you're building a frame and spanning the spandrel from column to column and then mounting the letters to the sign. That allows the building to maintain its architectural integrity, and it allows the signs to do whatever they need to do. Now, the fact of the matter is, I know there was a lot of concern about, colors and all that. If you build an office building, you're going to get logos, you're going to get different colors because everyone has corporate colors. That's something you're going to live with once you decide you're going to get an office building. And that's fine, but it would be a much better solution to allow all of those things to happen on some sort of frame system that allowed the architecture to maintain its integrity and not to just glom on a panel, or a cabinet or whatever you want to call this thing, not to just glom that onto the surface very glibly. I think the worst part of it is that this panel is right at the top of it, is at the entablature of the columns. That's where they end. It's an important point in the architecture. It's a very, very strong architectural frame, and that frame is just ignored by this sign that's attached to it. I'm just harping now, but I don't think it's a good solution personally. I don't have any problem with the height, but I think it's a mistake. If we don't have any control over that, that's fine, but we will all regret it when it goes up there because it will look not so good.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Tronis.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Loftus. I can make the findings for height and I can make the findings for size on the signage. I think we have fairly unique circumstances with the overall height of the building, and the height of the building has been dictated, as the applicant has mentioned, due to the various different issues on the site and the gravity that we want this building and this project to have in our downtown area. So I could make those findings. I consider the alternative. If the signage were all down at 24 feet, we would get a lot of clutter down at that 24-foot height all around the building, like a bathtub ring. That would be very unsightly. I consider also an alternative, and which is almost equally galling, where you have, some sort of marquee at the entrance of your driveway, and it has all of the different, Calico Corners and Fuddruckers and all the different places that you can go and see within this project. And we don't want to see anything like that. So considering the alternatives, I think that this is a good solution in terms of placement, in terms of height and size. I would make the argument along the lines of what Vice Chair Loftus was saying, that I would even be willing to tolerate some sign like the DPAC sign that we're seeing as an example, that was mounted up on the glazing or the curtain wall of that penthouse. That could be an elegant solution there, and then it would have even more height and more presence. But to just sort of, it seems like we have a very experienced signage consultant. So I hesitate saying this, but it seems like a very simple, almost lazy solution to just say, okay, we're going to strap a band across this architecture, and then you can put whatever signage is going to happen on that band. It just, I don't know. It looks a little, and I'm not a signage consultant. I don't do this for a living. But it sort of looks like signage 101 with just a basic plate that you then mount stuff to. And that plate is just covering over the elegant architecture. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
So for me, I think that we're harping on this because we do appreciate the quality of the project and the effort and everything that has gone into it thus far, and what we're ultimately all wanting. So this isn't really about moaning and groaning about the project. It's about how do we bring out the best in this solution. And so for me, I'm just not seeing it in the drawings that we have at the moment that the panel is the solution to go with. I feel like there could be a bunch more details that would help explain it more and better understand how it's going to affect the architecture at the top. But we don't really have that with this group of drawings to be able to then be comfortable and say this is going to work out fine. So I would encourage that, you know, and looking at the elevations, there aren't a lot of different solutions to choose from, and the placement is probably fine. And I agree with Commissioner Toronis that I can make the findings for everything. It's just how's it going to be done is where I'm sticking at the moment. So that's my feedback. I see that Commissioner Gold's hand is up.
Yeah, you know, I'm going back to the original design of the building and the plaza and actually all of downtown Burlingame, where we've tried to make it still, you know, we knew it was going to be a big building, but we tried to make it have a downtown, small town feel, because Burlingame is not a big city. I mean, so I, from the beginning, thought that the building was a little bit too large, but I believe that I did vote for it in the end to keep things moving forward. But again, there was a lot of discussion about the plaza and how this is going to feel at a pedestrian level. And there's going to be signs on this building at the pedestrian level. To me, the signage on this building looks like someone's trying to dress up a cityscape or a landscape, you know, a waterfront at some point. So I'm having trouble with the variances kind of all the way around. I get Commissioner Toronis's point where you don't want a whole bunch of small signs down on the bottom, but I've had to go to appointments in San Francisco for large firms and that has no sign. You're given an address and you walk in the lobby and there's a directory and you take the elevator up. So I get the desire to want to have a sign for a company or for a building, but I think that this is going to be more than what we're expecting. You are going to get some of those corporate branding colors and lettering styles. So you know, you could have BevMo up there next to Chase, and so you're going to have blue and red next to each other, and I don't think it's going to look right. And this building is going to be seen from certain parts of our residential areas as well, and I don't think that that's what people are looking for when they're looking out of their homes in Burlingame. To me, it just has a real big city downtown feel by putting this many signs and these sizes up so high on the building. And I'm not sure I can support any of the variance requests at this point.
Okay, Commissioner Say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I kind of go in the direction of what Commissioner Gall just said. This is it's not a 80-story high rise in the middle of a giant city. We're a small town, and it's a 6-story building. And it's supposed to be our city center with this nice park and plaza in the front. And I just can't help but imagine this building with a rainbow of colors of lit signage on all 4 sides, kind of radiating around the building. And I think it's going to affect some of the neighboring residential areas. And it's a lot of advertising, and I'm just not sure if a building of this size in our town needs that type of tenant advertising. And I think that it might even affect some tenants from coming if they see a certain brand or some other company that's there and they don't want to be paired with that company name or be seen to be like a company name or whatever it might be. Maybe it's on a similar stature to their company. And I think that might complicate things as well too. And so I'm having trouble with just imagining how this is going to look when it's all lit up at night. And I think in the day it won't bother me as much. And obviously there'll be colors everywhere we look. And but at night in particular, with the size that's being proposed and that there's so many of them, 8 of them are wrapped around the building. It's just bothering me right now.
So we have an action item with some variances with it, and I'm not hearing a lot of consensus on said direction at the moment. So we need to kind of start to think of how we're going to give them some direction. Commissioner Toronis, you have your hand up.
I think I was just going to make some comments in regards to the potential need or the apparent need for signage. From my perspective, if we don't give the developer and their team some mechanism to attract tenants, I think we run the risks of being sort of, if not blamed, at least being a potential issue in terms of being able to occupy the building and get it leased. From my perspective, tenants that are potentially going to come in are likely going to want to have some identity for taking space in this location. And so I think we have to offer them that potential tool in order to fill the spaces from my perspective. So again, I can make the findings for certain aspects of this variance, but not for all of them. And it seems like we are a bit split on some of these issues. So I'd like to make a motion to continue this item and ask that the applicant come back with at least some revisions to how they address the covering of the architecture as one of the tenants or one of the issues in their variance. But from my perspective, again, I don't make this a part of my motion because we're not approving anything. I'm motioning for a continuance. But I can make the findings for the height and size on this signage. So motion to continue.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. I'd like to offer that they can consider how a signage program might go. I know I've done a ton of retail work in my life and a lot of different signage. And in some cases you get pinned in having to do a green sign because that's what they've approved and that's all they're going to let you do. And it's not really great for your logo or any of those things. And I understand that, but I also realize that these are going to be signs that are very high on our building and are going to be bright. And if we're going to make it work for more people, then I think that there needs to be some thought put to how a signage program could work so that it's approvable. Because if we just approve this without any kind of guidance, then that's what we're going to get. So I think that they need to come back with a bit more clarity of how they're going to manage their colors and fonts and things, even if they don't know who their tenants are going to be. There needs to be a little bit more to it than what we're seeing. So that's my add-on to the discussion. So we have a motion to continue, a second by Commissioner Tronis and a second by Vice Chair Loftus. Any other feedback before we vote? Okay. Then let's vote.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Foth,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion to continue carry 6001. Okay. Now moving on to our design review study items. We're moving on to item number 9A, 132 Stanley Road. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared to talk, for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This application is for design review. The applicant is proposing to demolish all structures on site to build a new two-story house and detached garage. The total proposed floor area is 3,295 square feet, where 3,340 square feet is the maximum allowed. There will be a total of 4 bedrooms. 2 parking spaces are required. 1 covered space is provided in the detached garage and an uncovered space in the driveway. All other zoning code requirements have been met. If there are any questions of staff, I'm available at this time.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project? Hector, I think if you unmute yourself, you're ready to go.
Hi, good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Hector Estepona. I was the one who designed and prepared the plans for Jerry Deals Associates. If you have any technical questions, please do so. And the owner as well is here too.
Hi, my name is Hakan, and we live on 604 Bayeswater Avenue currently, and we are planning to demolish the house on 132 Stanley Road and build a two-story house. And we really, we have been Burlingame 8 years, and we really love the city. So that's why, and our family is, getting bigger. So that's why we want to have an Christmas styles, which we already have also on Bayeswater, and build a new one on Stanley. And eventually we will move to Stanley. So if you have any questions, let us know.
Great, thank you guys. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? Vice Chair Loftus, first to ring in.
Yes, can you talk to us a little about the windows over the stairs? What the thinking is behind the divided lights over the large undivided panels? I get that. I guess you're mimicking the divided lights over large panels on the rest of the windows, but it's somehow different. What is that? What you're doing?
Yes, correct. The ones at the bottom windows are longer. So in terms of the height, they are longer. So that's why for small windows we don't have that option. So just to mimic the everything, all the windows, we end up for small windows still have 6 pieces.
And then vents behind on that, on the landing.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thanks.
Commissioner Pfaff?
I lost my notes, so I will come back to you, but I just know, I'm sorry, I just noticed, I think you're my neighbor.
Yes, correct.
Sorry, nice to see you. I was like, you look familiar, but I don't even know if I'm allowed then, therefore the project is a little further away, but I didn't even know if I'm allowed to comment. I do have a comment, but I'm looking for my notes, but maybe I'll leave that to the city attorney to can I vote on his project?
Can you go into a little more detail on?
Well, he lives across the street from me, and their project is around the corner, just barely in the area where I can vote. But I don't know, it's up to you. But I just wanted to disclose that.
No, and we very much appreciate your disclosure. I mean, it's a little hard to make an on the
sorry
judgment. No, that's fine. It's not your fault.
I didn't know he was even applying. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely not your fault. I think in an abundance of caution, it would probably be best if you did recuse from the project.
Okay, sorry.
No, not your problem at all. Thank you very much for letting us know.
Okay, minus Commissioner Pfaff. Then I don't see any other questions for the applicant. So then we'll go ahead and go to the public and see if there's anybody who wishes to speak at this time. Okay, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and come back to the commissioners. Comments? Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I think this is a quite nice project. I like the composition. I like the articulation. I like the scale. It's there's nothing boring about it. The only thing that I am at all hesitant about is the divided lights over the large panes at the stair. That feels very clumsy to me. It feels like it's reaching to try to mimic the rest of the windows because it's so out of scale, and it looks like it's got a structural component that's dividing the upper panels from the lower panels. It's much different than the other ones. I think it'd be better if it didn't do that, but I wouldn't vote against it for that reason. I think it's otherwise quite a nice project.
Okay. I would agree with you. I think that one window area is the one area that probably could use a little work. And I think that they could be a tad smaller. It's an awful big composition for that stairwell, then also looking at the neighbor. So I think there's an opportunity there to maybe relook at that, to bring down the scale of the windows and then reformulate the composition. But I agree. Otherwise, I like the project. Anybody else? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion. I agree. I like the architecture. I think it's well proportioned and well detailed. As a detail, I will point out that on this project, we have a hierarchy between the windows on the upper floor versus the windows on the lower floor. I think this project does that rather nicely. So I'm going to make a motion to bring this back actually on the consent calendar. The only thing
Second
before us
that
is
motion.
interview. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion to bring it back on the consent calendar. Did you mumble in a condition there, Commissioner Tronis?
No, sorry. I just was
Okay.
saying the only thing before us is design review. I think Commissioner said in a second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Tronis to bring it back on consent with a second by Commissioner Say. Any further discussion? No, let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Tronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 5011. And let's see, I don't believe I have anything to read. So therefore, congratulations. And we're moving on to the next one. 9B, 501 Bayeswater Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be ready for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have our staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is proposing to replace the existing one-story single-unit dwelling and detached one-car garage at 501 Bayeswater Avenue with a new two-story single-unit dwelling and detached garage. The new single-unit dwelling would contain 4 bedrooms. For clarification, the entertainment room on the first floor does not qualify as a bedroom since it is open to the foyer. The project would also include a detached ADU. Review of the ADU application is administrative only and is not reviewed by the Planning Commission. Staff has determined that the ADU complies with the ADU ordinance. So in summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a new 2-story single-unit dwelling and detached garage. The applicant is in attendance, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Great. Do we have any questions at this point? Quick question. Garage setback. It seems awfully tight on this one. Can we clarify, is it 20 feet from the sidewalk line or the property line? It looks like it's maybe 18 feet from the sidewalk.
Let me look into that, and perhaps the applicant may be able to answer it as well.
Fine. I'll be patient. Okay. So then we're going to let Jesse take the heat.
Good evening, commissioners and Chair Schmidt. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss this project. The story behind this this residence is really interesting. You know, when I bought my house in 1997, And when we moved in, this house was actually unoccupied. And ever since I've lived here until this day, 3 houses away, it's been unoccupied. So unfortunately, the owner and contractor or builder, Eck Construction, and Robin Eck is unable to be with us tonight for the reason that he had a surgery. So he's healing at the moment. But I'm here to present the project and say that we're really excited about this house. Again, it's been empty for a long time. I designed it in accordance to a lot of the Spanish architecture that's kind of going up around our neighborhood. In general, it has a little flavor of my own residence that I like a lot, and I get a lot of compliments from neighbors. But with that said, we tried to design this thing, both Robin and I, to have it reflect a really nice facade off of Bayeswater and off of Dwight. Bob and Kathy, who live on Dwight across the street from this new residence, have kind of like dueling front doors. So it kind of creates this, entry point off of Dwight before you enter Bayeswater. The overall design, as you know, is a Spanish in architecture. And, we've kept it fairly a low profile house with not steep pitches of any sort. And just try to get the fenestration and the windows all to kind of align in a nice synchronized manner. I think that's basically what I have to offer at the moment, and hear what you have to say in regards to the project, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Vice Chair Loftus.
I've got a question. I want to make sure that I'm reading the plans and the elevation. The right side elevation, it looks like the window in bedroom 1 is out of place. I was trying to figure out what's going on behind the blank walls that are hidden behind the cypress trees. And it looks like one of the windows is almost centered in bedroom 1, but it's supposed to be near the edge, symmetrical with the kitchen window. Is that right? Or am I looking at this wrong?
Well, it gets a little confusing because it's you have 2 front facades almost on this. But so bedroom number 1 and elevation
on A5, right. It's elevation 4 on A5, the right side elevation, looking at the dining room, the folding windows, and then
I see what you're saying. That is correct. Yeah, the elevation is correct. I need to move that window in bedroom number 1 over.
Okay. That was the only question I've got. Thank you.
Commissioner Say.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I had the same question about that window on the right side elevation. Additionally, Jesse has, let's see, is this, the owner is going to be living there? So is that what you're saying? Or no, is this going to be a spec?
This will be a spec house.
Oh, it's spec house. I was just wondering if anyone talked with the neighbor next door on Bayeswater. I remember from kind of past projects, concerns about like a side yard patio coming off of an entertaining space that, whether that will create a lot of noise for a neighbor, close by from that rear or side, whatever orientation we're talking about here, really their side elevation. Just wondering if there was any conversation with that neighbor, just so that they're aware of that patio there.
Yes, 100%. Robin Eck did speak to that neighbor in regards to the overall design and showed him the elevations, and there wasn't any issues from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Jesse, do you know your setback from the garage, from how far off it is from either the property line, or it just seems like the existing garage is tight. It seemed to me that if I parked my Jeep there, I'd be right on the sidewalk.
Correct. Yeah, I have 20 feet from the back of the sidewalk to the face of the garage.
Okay. Okay. Then any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Pfaff?
Yeah, I think it's nicely done, but I do have a question. The second floor, Jesse, is it the same, about the same height as your own, or is it taller? Or I should say the lower floor plate height and the upper, is that about the same as your own, just so I can visualize?
Oh, right. The lower level is 6 inches. Mine is currently 9 feet. This would be 9'6", and then the double top plate is, yeah, it's typical 8'6".
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then without any further questions, I'm going to go to the audience and see if there's anybody out in the public that wishes to speak at this time. Looks like we have one hand up. Okay, Andrew Geosits, your chance to talk. You unmute yourself. We're ready for you.
Okay, so I am the neighbor at 501 Bayeswater, and I haven't really seen the plans yet. I am, I wanted to attend this meeting to take a look at the plans. This is the first time I've seen them. One question I do have is, how close to the property line is the back of the garage?
Oh, we are currently 1 foot away from each side, which is
okay. So that's a problem, because my garage is about a foot away from the property line. It's been there since 1924. How do we paint between there? If we need to do some work on both the back of this new garage and the back of my garage, or the side of my garage.
A maintenance, yeah, well, we would, I'm not quite sure exactly how they would do that, other than, be on top of the roof and paint it, but
the roof has an overhang, and
there's no overhang on the property lines. Those are fire rated, so those are all flush.
I'm sorry, sir, if we could have you state your entire comment, and then we can have the applicant address it following the conclusion of that. But if you could use the remainder of your time to make any additional points or comments.
Sure. The only thing I'm concerned with, two things, is the setback from the property line, so that we could work on our house as well as they're working on the back of their property. How we deal with the fence line, because we only have 2 feet of space, and my roof does overhang. So, and then the other thing is, you talked about, I think Jennifer brought up the fact that that center section could be, if people are out there partying, it could be kind of loud, because our kitchen window and dining room window is directly across from that center part, which faces south. So anyway, those are my two concerns.
Great, thank you. I would encourage that maybe you and Jesse and the property owner maybe have an offline conversation on some of those items. I know I had a similar issue with the garage, and I had, when they took down the wall behind my garage, I painted, and then they put up their garage, and I never looked at it ever again. And well, so it's definitely a challenge. I understand your pain on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
in regards to the side patio area, we could always eliminate that and just make that a stoop and steps going down. I think that's not a problem at all. It's not a very large space, so I wouldn't foresee anybody using it as like a party central area of any sort. So, but if it'd make you feel more happy, we'd be more than happy just to have a landing and some steps on it.
It would be interesting for me to get together with you.
Sure.
And basically take a look at this at the property and at your convenience. Yeah. And just review a couple things. And I think the structure is quite nice. And other than those two comments I had, that's it.
Great. More than happy. We're neighbors.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So not seeing any more hands up. Director Gardner, do we have any online communication for this one?
No, no emails.
Okay. Perfect. Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, come back to the commissioners. Comments, thoughts? Well, while people are raising their hands, I'll say I think that patio on the side, given that it isn't necessarily for, that it's going to be a speculative, I think that there's an encouragement to maybe use the side yard between the house and the garage more so for that kind of an activity rather than making the side, the back somewhere desirable to go. So I think you could program that so that it doesn't happen to the neighbor. So anyway, Commissioner Say, you have your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, I just think I think it'd be good to review that element with the neighbor. And just wanted to say that I think it's a very nicely designed home. I see also the relationship to the neighbor across the street on Dwight. I noticed that when I went to visit the site, and I think that there's some nice relationship there. And I want to also say that that I like how Jesse has articulated the Bayeswater side of the house as well. So there's some nice interest, even though that is not the front of the house. So I think it's a very nicely designed home altogether, and I'm happy to put a motion to bring this back, I guess, on action so that they can address, or we could, would that be the best way? Bring it back? Yeah, on action.
Yeah, I'll second that motion. So we have a motion by Commissioner Say to bring it back on action and a second by myself. Any further discussion? Okay, then let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Foff,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Congratulations. And then moving on to item number 9C, 1536 Columbus Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be ready to speak to you at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to go to the project site or want to note any ex parte communications?
Mr. Chair, I'll be recusing from this. I live within 500 feet.
Got it. Okay. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
This application is for a design review for a first and second story addition to an existing single unit dwelling. The applicant is proposing to demolish a majority of the existing first floor and a portion of the existing second floor. The proposed project includes reconfiguring the front covered porch, remodeling the first floor, and rebuilding and adding to the second floor. 4 bedrooms are proposed and 2 parking spaces are required. 1 parking space is provided in the attached garage and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. The total floor area will increase to 2,754 square feet, or 2,779 square feet is the maximum allowed. All other zoning code requirements have been met. I'm available for any questions of staff.
Great. Do you have any questions? So I have a question on the junior ADU. We don't seem to have an exterior, I mean, I guess we have the sliding doors in the back, but the entrance seems to be through the garage. Do we have issues with that relative to the ADU code?
I apologize, I don't have the plans in front of me, but Jesse, if you can answer that in terms of the exiting for the ADU.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Smith, you're asking the question in regards to, I just got on, so.
No, I understand.
Oh, yeah, just in regards.
I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that when we open up the hearing. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
It was a question of staff first. And
yeah, let me jump in because I'd looked at this earlier in the day. It is the sliding doors would be the entrance to the exterior. So Whereas normally we see a more conventional door, there's nothing in the code that would disallow having sliding doors as the primary entrance.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, then let's see. You asked about questions. We don't have any questions. So then we're going to move on to the applicant. So Jesse, you're up.
Good evening, commissioners. Once again, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to present this project. This project was supposed to be an alteration and kind of addition to the residence, and it just kind of snowballed into more of a new house situation. We are keeping the whole existing foundation and floor, and then pretty much kind of building anew on top of that. The style, as you know, is the farmhouse design that I've been doing a lot of, which a lot of clients are seeking nowadays. This one particular project has a little bit of a different entry with a little bit of a modern or contemporary design to it that my client was really looking to incorporate with a nice facade of stone. Trying to get that modernism with farmhouse design, get kind of intertwined for the overall look of the house. Otherwise, it's a pretty typical farm style of steep gable design for your review, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm curious how we're looking at the ADU differently than a bedroom that happens to be off the stair. Per code, those doors are allowed to be the two-way lockable to separate the unit from the residence. I looked into that, and at least if that's your question. Oh, now I know why. I'm on the wrong page. That's why it's not making any sense now. Okay. Then never mind. I'll move on. Oh, there it is. Commissioner Say.
Jesse, I think there might be just a little bit of a drafting omission. There's some Juliet balconies, I think, that are on the upper floor at the rear. They're not showing in the floor plan, so just
okay.
Wanted to see if you can add those in.
That's a problem. People falling out. Second floor. Actually, Audrey, there's mine shows them. I have a plus 42-inch guardrail
on the second floor plan.
Yeah. They're really tight.
Oh, there they are. Yeah. Sorry, I was reading them as patio doors.
Oh, right.
Okay, yeah. So they're there. Sorry. And then on the left elevation, I couldn't see well from the neighbor to the left. There's a lot of vegetation between these two properties. And this is so tight against the, the side property line. And then the neighbor to the left is also close to, their structures are very close as well to the fence. Was there any review with that neighbor of kind of sight lines, some of these windows? It's a very flat elevation. I know where I'm not in comments yet right now. I want to ask the question about if you talked to them or showed them all these numbers of windows on that side.
No,
affects them at all.
We hadn't, no, only for the reason that there's tons of trees and vegetation there. So we didn't really see any, any visual impact, I think, basically because of all those trees that are there. So no, to answer the question, we haven't spoke to that neighbor in regards.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gall. You got to unmute, sir.
I hope I don't have to be the chair soon. I'll never get this right.
Start practicing now.
Don't get me started. On both side elevations, it appears that the windows seem to kind of be in sort of a regular spacing and all of similar sizing. Is that intentional? Yeah, I'm used to seeing a little bit more variation in the combination of windows and their sizes and stuff.
It kind of was laid out due to the floor plan layout for the upper level. Like rather than grouping them together, I kind of kept them separate for architectural reasons. I mean, I could group some together, or like the ones that are going from the primary bedroom in the front towards the bathroom, I could group those together.
Yeah, I mean, I can save it for comments, but it just seems to me that it's kind of this repetition thing and it doesn't help that elevation, I'll say.
Okay.
I'll go right in comments. So thank you.
Yeah, I could definitely group those together. I think that probably looked good too.
Thanks.
Commissioner Pfaff?
Yeah, I had the same question about the very regular windows and such as Commissioner Gall, but I'm trying to, so when I drove along the street, it is, I know that there is one farmhouse close to this one, a new one across the street. But the majority are like what is being torn mainly down, that fairy tale. And so I'm also kind of looking at, well, is there a way to make this a little more whimsical? And I don't know if that was, you said making it modern. I don't know if the stone makes it modern for me, but I could read more, pulling it back into that more whimsical fairy tale, what is that 1930s thing? But I guess my question is where you have the stone, I don't understand in the middle there. And I'm trying to understand why is it so, is there a reason why it goes the entire wall high? And I mean, I'm not really understand what's happening there, I guess is.
Yeah, if you would look at the section on page A8, and that would be the longitudinal section number 6. And that would kind of give you the idea of what's happening with that entrance and the ceiling and the skylight for the entry of that. Maybe if that kind of clarifies it a little bit. And then we have this marquee style awning that's above it to, kind of give it, some characteristics to it for the modern look.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Tronis?
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick one, Jesse. Looking at the left side elevation, it's broken up well with the windows. I agree they're a little regular, but at least it's not just a plane. You've broken it down with some windows, but I'm wondering if there's some other articulation that can happen along there. If you thought, for example, of maybe just a simple awning roof over that entry door. Might help with some scale along that elevation.
Yeah, for sure.
Side yard,
great idea. Yeah.
Just something to help just break down that tall mass. I know, like you said, I know it's up against the other house and it's a side yard. So, but I think it would help that elevation.
Also, yeah, and for rain and, for the door. Naturally, I try to put that on. I think I probably missed doing that, but thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Not seeing any more here. So then I'm going to go ahead and go to the public and see if there's anyone out in the public that wishes to speak. Looks like we have a couple hands up for this one. Okay, Lynn, you're in. There you go.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Lynn Israelit, and I live at 1560 Columbus. And I just wanted to talk tonight because I do have some real concerns about the proposed design for this house that you're looking at just now. To me, the house looks really tall. I believe it's at the height limit on that right side, and it makes it look very imposing looking. I think, most of the houses on the street have some variation in the front setbacks and little details that break their front facades up a bit. And I think the fact that this house has that board and batten, that's, those unbroken, really tall, long vertical lines makes it just look all the more imposing and unfriendly. So my other concern is, you had asked some questions about it, but the center section where the front door and entryway are, firstly, I think that the stone facade doesn't really go. It's sort of like this little slice of stone in the middle of this otherwise modern farmhouse look. And it just seems very disjointed and overly busy. It doesn't seem to have like a unifying theme. It doesn't just seem to go together, I guess is the only way I can explain it. And in addition, the front door and the entryway are just kind of lost. They're just like outsized by the two big elements on either side. And all of the other homes on our street have these charming entranceways or porches. And even that modern farmhouse across the street has a sweet little porch. So this house just kind of looks funny. It doesn't really, the door seems small, the entranceway seems small, and that single pane light above the front door looks odd. I also had concerns about the west elevation. It looks very, as you've all mentioned, it looks very monolithic. Whereas, in contrast, the east elevation is broken up nicely with different roof lines and different window sizes, and it's much more attractive. I think those are really my main concerns, but I will just point out one last thing is that this house just doesn't really fit very well with the houses around it. I think it's going to look very stark and modern and not in a good way. Thank you for listening to me and taking that into consideration.
Great, thank you. Okay, and we have another hand up. Okay, David Morrow, you're in. If you unmute yourself, we're ready for you.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, commissioners. Thanks for taking my call here. I live right next door on the right side elevation. I'm really concerned about this project. I've been here for almost 30 years now. The part about the ADU, I'm not thrilled with because I have another one going up on the other side of me shortly. I agree with Lynn Israelite. The look of that house is stark. It does not fit next to my house whatsoever. I have a lovely Spanish Mediterranean that I added on to, and I kept the style of the architecture of the house that I had originally with Spanish tiles. That farmhouse across the street, stark white. Don't ask me how that ever got through. I wish I was paying attention because it makes the block doesn't look cohesive. I'm also concerned about the height where is there a daylight setback height limitation? I believe the height might be too close to my house where I will get no light on that side of the house. It's going to be 4.5 feet higher than it is now. That's my concern. And all the windows are concerned because those look right in to my bedrooms on my side of that house. I have a small window that looks into my bathroom, and I have two windows each in the two bedrooms that were original. I did not change that when I did my addition remodel. And I really wish he would have used the 501 plan for this place. I think it'd be way more cohesive to the neighborhood. What the architect did on 501 Bayeswater would fit this neighborhood so much better than what he's proposing. I'm just not in favor of this design whatsoever. What else is there? I got some more time. So I'd like to ask a question about the daylight with the height. Is there something that can be a trade-off? Maybe it doesn't have to be so high. I know you can, but you know, that's a lot of wasted space up on top there for heating and cooling and everything else. It's not energy efficient anymore. The backyard is fine. Not too happy with the tree in the back corner there. We had one there before that we had to get taken out about probably 10 years ago. It overgrown and started putting stuff in my backyard. So I'm not too thrilled with that. And basically, I think it should be redone, to be perfectly honest with you, to fit the neighborhood. I mean, you all went to my house, you seen it's right next door. This house looks nothing like my house. And I get it, a lot of people like those houses, I guess now, but I think the farmhouse look is going to go out. It's not a style that's going to be living forever. Where you get Spanish Mediterraneans, they are tried, true, and tested over the course of time. I thank you for listening to me, and hopefully we could. And the guy he never talked to us one time about this project, so that's kind of disheartening too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Don't have any further hands up. Director Gardner, do we have any electronic comment? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
That's correct. We do not.
So then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners. Commissioner Pfaff.
Yeah, I just I'm sorry, I forgot. I have one more question and I want to make sure I'm reading this right. Is the first floor plate height, Jesse, on the right, I'm looking at the right, is that 14 feet? Is that possible?
Jesse's not still inside the meeting part at the moment.
Well,
so
then
I don't think
an
he can
architect,
answer.
please help me. I mean, I'm reading what I think is the number and it looks like it's 14. The first floor on the right hand side.
Well, it's because it's split level.
Oh, okay. And
You
then
got different floor heights left and right.
yeah, and then the left is 12. Are we doing 12 anymore?
I think it's a 9-foot plate height on the first floor.
Oh.
Even though it's not identified as such. I think it's 8 feet to the top of the doors and windows, but then 10 feet to the finished floor above. So I'm assuming like in the middle, there's probably a header over the windows. So it's probably a 9-foot plate height on the first floor and a 9-foot second floor plate height. That's the way I read it.
Okay.
The 14 feet that you're reading on the right is the declining height dimension.
Oh, sorry. That's why I asked. Okay.
Okay. So while you're still in charge, do you have any comments that you want to share?
Me more? No, yeah. I mean, I tend to agree with the folks who have spoken. I just feel like I can't decide what it quite wants to be, and I'm drawing on it, and I know we're not supposed to draw on we're not supposed to design the projects for people. I'm looking at the left hand gable, the second floor, and looking at that middle section that I think looks just strange. And I'm bringing the right hand roof down like in a swoop, like a sort of a, I don't know, sort of fairy tale Tudor-ish line, rather than having all the, and that could swoop down and you've got the door below it. But it's just, at some point, it's just not the right way to design drawing on the top of the drawing. So I'll leave that up to the architects to figure out, but I don't have any further comments, but it is seems pretty overwhelming for the street and for the locations. That's my comment.
Okay. Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, this, when I first looked at this, it did strike me as a very tall house. And when I went down the street, it reinforced that feeling and that look even more. Because the house that's there actually fits in with the rest of the neighborhood. And I have to agree with some of the comments, not just that the public put out today, but that I've gotten over the last couple of years, that the other farmhouse on that block, I have to agree, I don't think it fits in, and I'm not sure that we should have approved it as such, but that's a very stark house because it's all painted white and it's got black trim and there's not much landscaping in the front. But back to this house, it just does appear very tall. And when you go to those side elevations, I think one of the things that's bothering me on the left side or the west elevation is that the upstairs windows are taller than the downstairs windows, which is not helping that whole facade there. I get the farmhouse look, and I think with the proper landscaping and the right colors, it might work, but one of the members of the public that said the board and batten siding it's kind of exacerbating that height, and I have to agree with that. It's just giving you vertical lines. So I'm not sure. I think it needs another pass, but I also did have a question, because the house shows that it is within the declining height envelope or the daylight plane, and that's not mentioned in the staff report. Is that something that should have been picked up, or that was missed, or what's happening there? I guess that would be a question of staff, but I'm not 100% on board with this project at the moment. I think it should be brought down in height.
Okay, Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I think that the house as standing sort of on its own is nicely designed and well crafted, but in the context of the neighborhood, I agree with some of the comments of my fellow commissioners. For me, I think that the main issue is the entry. The entry presents itself as a little bit more monumental than anything else in the neighborhood. I don't necessarily have an issue with the palette of materials per se. I think that the entry could be stone, but as Commissioner Pfaff was saying, if it were something that were kind of coming off of one of the other gables or something of that sort, it could have sort of that storybook look and still be stone. And I think it could help fit into that neighborhood. But instead, it's sort of breaking that plane and or breaking the lines of the adjacent gables and trying to, sort of insert itself in between there and be something more monumental than it really ought to. I think in terms of the materials, I don't necessarily have an issue with the board and batten, but there might be an opportunity to introduce some other material as a base, and that could help bring down the scale, particularly for that front gable on the right side. If there were another material that were introduced at a wainscot level or something, that could also then help with that side elevation, the west elevation that we've talked about, and introduce some base material that could help with the scale. The only thing that's being asked of us is design review. So, I don't really have an issue in terms of the overall height. Yeah, Commissioner Gall makes a good point. There seems to be some issue with the declining height envelope on the right side where there's some violation there. Maybe it's de minimis, or maybe it falls within an exception, but I think we should get an interpretation on that. So I think that there's just some material issues that could be applied to the project, and then also to that front entry that would help it fit into the context of the neighborhood a little better. Thanks.
Commissioner Say?
Yes, I generally agree with what has already been said, and want to state also that looking at this, the design of the house out of and not being on the street, I thought that it looked really tall and foreboding, but at the street, it seems to fit in the sense of there's kind of deeper setbacks on that street, and in some of the homes in the area kind of have some of scale and height similar to this. But I do feel that the vertical board and batten is exacerbating the verticality of the house. So I think that there could be some material selection edits that might improve the feel of this house looking so tall. I agree also that that the center entry area feels almost tunnel-like. I think that the front door, it's only 8 feet tall, but somehow it almost seems like it's a 10-foot tall door, and skinny, but actually to scale, it scales fine. And so I think it's just that that it's somehow squeezed into this middle corridor. And so I think that there could be some way to make it a little bit more of a welcoming entrance. And I feel that the left, in particular, the left elevation is fairly flat and could use some more articulation, even though it is facing the side yard and up against a lot of vegetation. It looks fairly flat and tall. And having not stepped on the neighbor to the left's property, I'm kind of worried about what they might see there from their property. And likewise, a little bit on the right, but I'm less concerned there on the right. But the left side looks quite flat. Looks like it needs a little bit more attention. And then I think on the declining height envelope, from what I'm reading of the plans, it looks like it might be a pre-existing condition that is carrying forward, although that second story seems like it is entering that declining height envelope. Anyway, I agree that there should be some clarification on that the next time around when we see this again.
Okay. You know, I'm looking at the existing house now, and it's a split level on a flat lot. So here, you know, it's one thing when you have a lot that's sloping side to side and you're dealing with split level, but what's really happening here is because we're continuing the split level design into the new house, it's then making that right side really a lot taller than it needs to be. And because, you know, and if you look at the existing house, it has a pop-out living room that's at a shorter scale. And so the height is towards the back of the house, and it works pretty well with the neighbors. Whereas unfortunately, you know, this design here, it's going up 2 stories right on the front. And it's really making that scale even worse. So I think I think we're struggling there on that. I'm struggling with the entry. I can see it, I can read it, but it's without a 3D in there, it's not making me feel comfortable. It's just looking like a lot of lines. And so I'm not really feeling the love in there right now, as far as it being a good solution. So I think that there's some work to be done. I think that, you know, as Jesse said, is it started out as a remodel and has turned into a fairly sizable project to redo a lot of the house. It may be worth looking at it a little harder to rethink some of those existing conditions on why to have, you know, 4 or 5 feet of upward steps to get to the first level on the right, when it's really not going to be necessary in a new build. So, and I think that in turn is putting a lot of height challenges on the neighbor to the right. So I can definitely sympathize with the comments of the public this evening. So this is a design review study item. I think that we've given some really good feedback. Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion.
Okay, go for it. Saves me the chat.
I'll make a motion to bring this back on regular action when our comments have been addressed. Just one quick comment. I would note, looking closer at the right side of the east elevation, it appears that the portions that extend into the declining height envelope might fall within the exceptions for bays, but if we can get it, that description in the staff report next time, I think it would be helpful for everyone. Anyway, motion to bring this back on regular action.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so a motion by Commissioner Tronis and a second by Commissioner Say. Any further comments? Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Foff,
Aye.
Commissioner Tronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye, motion carries 6001. Even though we're moving this forward, I do encourage Jesse, you and your client have some good talks about this one so that we can help make the neighborhood feel a little bit better. Okay, moving on to the next item, 1928 Devereaux Drive. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand at this time so that we may be prepared to speak to you at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have been to the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, the proposed project involves a major remodel and second story addition to the existing dwelling at 1928 Devereaux Drive. The existing front and left side garage walls are non-conforming with respect to front and left side setbacks. And the non-conforming areas would not be modified as part of this project. The new construction proposed along the right side and the front of the house towards the right side would comply with the required setbacks. So in summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a first and second story addition to an existing single unit dwelling. The applicant is in attendance for questions, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Great. Do you have any questions at this time? Okay, then let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project? Oliver, I think you're in the meeting. If you unmute yourself, you can start. Oliver? If you unmute yourself, it's your turn to speak.
Commissioner Schmidt, there's a mic that's in the attendee, and I'm not sure if he's a property owner or not. I'm going to let him in for a second.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Just to see if perhaps Mike is going to talk to him.
Okay.
Okay, Mike is in. Mike, are you the property owner or an applicant?
Yes, I'm the good evening, commissioners. I'm the property owner. Thanks for taking the time to review this project. I think the architect probably have some audio difficulties.
That's okay. Is there anything in particular that you want to share about the project?
Yeah, I have been living here for almost 3 years, and a lot of friends visit here. They all say Burlingame is a beautiful city, and a lot of unique style buildings, house, and even in the Halloween, a lot of people in the neighborhood come here to visit. Right? It's a very interesting city. So I think. We have a baby after we move here. That's the reason we try to do this project. And thanks everyone. Appreciate all the commissioners provide the direction and the guideline for this project. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Did your architect want to, Oliver or Quig, did you want to say anything?
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries.
Got some problem. Yeah. We basically keep the existing ground floor outline. But we add the new porch on the front, but it still have more setback than the existing garage, and actually it has larger setback than the average block setback. Yeah, and then we add the second floor for the bedrooms and laundry room. Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, I'm willing to answer any questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, hi. I was looking at your front elevation and it says you have a prefab vinyl column wrap. So is that like a plastic column? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh yeah, that means it's a kind of a prefabricated. Maybe it's a vinyl or something. Yeah. If you
Is it like that? Is it like those cabinet doors that get kind of that shrink wrap vinyl around them?
If you Google the prefabricated column, you can get that. Usually, for example, it looks like it's a whole column. In reality, it's two pieces. When they install it,
yeah. I'm just not familiar with seeing those in vinyl necessarily. I've seen them in fiberglass, and then you.
Yeah. Or fiberglass. Yeah. Usually it's.
I mean, if you're going to go with a vinyl, if you could provide a spec sheet on that, I'd appreciate it. I'm not seeing how that's going to really look great, but that's, like I say, if you can provide a spec sheet, that'd be great. The other question I had is about your window sizes. When you're saying on one of them, you said 5 foot on the proposed west elevation, you got 5'2" net. Am I safe to assume that the outside frame of that would be 5'6", and the window sill would be approximately 2 feet off the floor?
You are talking about the west elevation, right?
Yeah, well, actually, pretty kind of all the windows, but that one sort of specs out some of the numbers. I just can't tell if that's 2 feet off the floor. Like you're saying, 5 foot.
Oh yeah. The sill height is 2 feet. Yeah.
On
that two windows are for the master bedroom. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're saying 5'2" net, I'm assuming that's the sash size. So the outside frame would be closer to 5'6". Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the plan checker asked me to mark out the net opening of the window.
Yeah.
Sure, that can meet the egress. Yeah.
Okay. So with a 4x12 header and an 8'6" plate height, you're looking at about 2 feet off the floor to the sill?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's 2 feet. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah. Speaking of the window sizes, I have a little bit of a concern for the windows that you have they're on the north elevation. And I believe they're into the bathroom area. They're not shown on the floor plan. I think they're into the bathroom number 2.
On the second floor, right?
On the second floor.
Okay.
Am I reading that dimension where it shows a 1 foot window?
Yeah.
So, and have you looked, is there a size that meets that? I mean, you're going to have very minimal glazing for that window.
Yeah, correct. That's the requirement from the owner. Yeah, they think that it's okay. So, yeah, I know that's a limited glazing areas. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have hardly any light coming in from that, and I would just encourage you to revisit that with the owners, and just because it's going to be a slit of just a few inches of actual glazing by the time you get some frame in there. Okay, and then my other concern is on the south elevation. There's the patio doors that you have going out to that landing. And it's a rather blank wall. It's just a tall blank wall without a lot of scale. I mean, we looked at one previously, and it was broken down at least by a number of windows that it had on that side. Did you look at any ways to break down that elevation, perhaps add a roof over those patio doors or something of that sort?
Yeah, actually, based on the design guideline, it's the city really don't want to see. They call it layered cake. So actually, we are trying to avoid to adding any continued roof on that side. but
Okay.
we have the roof on the front and the other side. So I think if a building we have this kind of a variation, maybe it's not bad. It's but for regarding the blank wall, I think probably we can also add another window right next to the French door. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you might be able to get a window in there into that little hallway outside that bedroom. The suggestion where I was headed was one possibility is you could extend the roof that's coming off of the backside of the, hold on a second, let me go to the floor plan so we're talking about the same right place. You've got a roof over that existing bathroom 1 that's off on the back of the garage.
On the back?
Yeah, on the back of the garage, you have the existing bathroom 1 on the first floor.
Yeah. We have a roof above that, yeah.
And then behind that, you have a deck where those patio doors come out onto that deck.
Yes.
You could extend the roof, just to have an extension, not all the way across the elevation. I get what you're saying in terms of not wanting to make a layer cake, but you could extend a portion of that roof from the back of that bathroom over those patio doors, create a little covered portion on that back patio. So you create a little bit of a stoop back there with the roof over it, would shade those doors, particularly since this is at south elevation, and would help with some scale on that elevation. So, you'd then have to calculate in terms of a covered porch and your square footage. But I think that there would be ways where you could possibly reduce some of the square footage in the master bedroom if you had to, and try to get some kind of roof over those doors and just break down that elevation. Regardless of what your solution is, I'm not going to try and dictate what your solution would be, but regardless of what it is, I'm just having an issue with the scale of that south elevation and how blank it is. So I'm just offering that as a suggestion of something that you could do to try to help break that down a bit.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions of the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll go ahead and go to the public and see if there's anybody who wishes to speak. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Director Gardner, any electronic communication?
No emails.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and come back to my fellow commissioners. Well, for me, I'm struggling with the window sizes. I think they're pretty big. And I think that the vinyl or the vinyl column wraps are not going to be a good solution. I think that they need to be something more like a fiberglass or a wood column to make that work. And so I'm struggling. Vice Chair Loftus.
We figure out how to get unmuted. I'm going to start with a very positive comment. I really appreciate the montage of photographs that are provided for us in the last page. I think that's remarkably helpful to see the buildings next to each other with the new design inserted into it, just to give a general overview of what we're looking at. It's not hyper detailed or hyper precise, but I really appreciate that. And so I'd just like to start out there. I find that I have a lot of the same problems with some of the windows, and I find the window trim to be quite bizarre. And I did not notice when I was out there whether or not that window trim, I didn't pay much attention to it. It doesn't show up on the existing elevations, which are quite small on A1. So I don't know if that's window trim was just, the exterior window trim was just picked up and used throughout the rest of the project, or whether it's some new solution that's not existing on the project. But it leads to sort of a weird feeling. The windows sit very odd in the facade, and especially those tiny ones up on the top floor that Commissioner Turonis pointed out. It's mostly trim. There's almost nothing there. It's almost no window. It's mostly trimmed, which is very, very odd, I think. You know, the west elevation and the front elevation seem very sort of generally well composed, and everything's in proportion to each other. Also, though some of the windows are quite large. The north elevation I think is okay. The south elevation, I just wrote this facade got lost. It's like it wasn't even part of the same building somehow. So I think that facade really needs some looking at, and it may be that the solution Commissioner Tronis has pointed out is a good one, but it feels to me like it may be more than that. I'm not sure that pulling that roof out will help that facade. It was just it's the ugly stepchild sort of thing. Anyway, you know, I think there's a lot of good things about this project, and if it weren't, you know, if I were looking at an entire building that looked like the south facade, I'd say this really needs to go to design review, but I don't think it does, because I think so much of the rest of the building of the design actually works. So I think it's close.
Commissioner Foff?
Yeah, I actually appreciate the Commissioner Loftus mentioning SV, that whatever that page was. I actually didn't even see that. And in that, it looks pretty darn good. But the window, you have the architect has a different pattern, which I prefer, because the large windows have been broken down into almost that kind of elongated Art Deco thing. You know, I don't know what they're called, but it looks, I think it looks pretty good that way on your I guess it's a rendering. So with the other comments that I think were very helpful about breaking the plane down a bit on that one side, and the little tiny window that needs a little help. I think I agree. I think it's almost there. Thanks.
Commissioner Gall.
I'll go back to the windows again. I think that's the big issue here. Structurally, I don't know that these are going to work. They all seem like they're squished up underneath the double top plate on the top floor, and you need some room for a header there. So it might be good to speak with an engineer or a contractor about how those could be built. But the windows on the top floor seem out of scale. Again, same on that south elevation, that door that Commissioner Toronos was speaking of, it scales out as an 8-foot door. And if that was brought down, that roof could come over. You know, there's solutions, but I think that the sizes of the windows and the doors need to be looked at. And I think the project could move forward because it's proportioned well and it fits the neighborhood, but there's some scale issues with some of those elements.
And, you know, looking at the existing trim on the photos, it actually is quite a bit smaller, which is more typical of a Ray Park home in that area. You know, it's probably 2-inch trim at best, whereas I think the drawings are showing a 4-inch trim. So it's definitely going up in scale, and everything is just kind of getting a little bulked up. So I think there's some opportunity to refine there on that. Okay, any further comments, or are we ready to make a motion? Mr. Loftus, are you thinking that he's ready for a little direction to come back on action?
Yeah, I think this could come back on regular action. I'd move that we bring it back on regular action once our comments have been addressed in some way or another. And I think we've done a good job of covering mostly the issues.
Okay, great. And I see Commissioner Tronis's lips moving. He seconded.
Sorry, I'll second that.
So we got a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Tronis. Can we have a vote?
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Foff,
You got to go off mute, Commissioner Foff.
I'm sorry. Aye.
Commissioner Toronas,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. Okay, moving on to item number 9E, 1366 DeSoto Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be ready to speak to you at the appropriate time. We ask that you turn on your video at that time as well. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Yeah, I spoke at length with the neighbor to the left.
Okay. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This application is for design review and special permits for building height and attached garage for a first and second floor addition to an existing single unit dwelling. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing detached garage and add an attached garage along the right side of the first floor. A new second floor is also proposed. The total floor area will be 3,013 square feet, where 3,020 square feet is the maximum allowed. 4 bedrooms are proposed and 2 parking spaces are required. 1 parking space is provided in the attached garage and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. A special permit is required for the new attached garage. The applicant is also requesting a special permit to exceed the maximum allowed building height by 11 inches. All other zoning code requirements have been met. If there are any questions of staff, I'm available at this time.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Will the applicant or the applicant's representative please come forward, state your name and anything you'd like to add about your project? Hi there.
Hey there. Well, first of all, I'd like to just thank the staff. Amelia, you kind of came on late to kind of take care of our project here. We had some turnover with our original planner, but really appreciate you stepping in. Well, introduce myself. I'm Nelson Wong. This is my wife, Christine, and our son, Cole. Cole is a little bit over 2 years old. It's about his bedtime right now, but we stayed on for this. We're currently living in a 2-bedroom condo in San Francisco. And, shortly after the pandemic, we quickly recognized that we needed more space. And especially with both of us actually working mostly from home and having a growing infant at the time, and now he's a toddler, we quickly decided that we need to, find a single family home that was more suitable for our family. And we almost immediately just decided that Burlingame was the right place for us to really start and raise our young family. And that's what we did. And 15 months ago, we purchased a house that you guys are looking at today. And we were actually expecting to move in within 3 to 6 months with the original intention to just do some light remodeling. But, as the pandemic went on longer and longer, we realized that 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms is just not going to be sufficient, to be quite honest, especially with a growing family like ourselves. And then, so finally, 6 months ago, we submitted our original application and we're here today. I do want to thank our neighbors for being, actually quite hospitable. And we talked actually at length with our neighbor on the right, actually, and I walked them through our plans in terms of doing the attached garage, building the 2nd story, and even possibly, needing to do a tree removal. And he was very supportive. Only got to talk to our other neighbor on the other side for a quick few minutes just a couple of weeks ago. Shared very just briefly what our plans were. So it sounds like you guys had some further conversation. So looking forward to that. And I'll end with just thank you to the commissioners here for taking the time to review our application here. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It looks like your architect's on the line as well. Is there anything you'd like to add about the project?
Yes, definitely. Well, good evening, commissioners, director, planning staff. Thank you for your time reviewing this application. Believe it or not, it's also my bedtime, actually. My name is Wayne Lee. I'm the architect of the project. We have been working with the owner, Nelson and Christine, since May last year. I'm going to just cut to the chase here. So it's very uncommon to have younger owner who would really truly appreciate the characteristic of the Spanish style house, and most of them they just want to completely demolish the existing condition. But In this case, rather than having a complete demolition of the house with drastic change to the front facade, which is highly visible to the public domain or the neighbors, owner committed to retain the Spanish look of the existing house, which is interesting, and I'm all for it. With the recommendation outlined in the neighbor design guideline, it really makes my job easier, actually. Having said that, of course, meeting their requirement, like having more space, is key. But I'm glad that owners are really good at listening to our advice by preserving the characteristic of the existing structure, and also respecting privacy and light quality of the abutting neighbors. And that's why the second story, we actually set back all 4 sides from the existing ground floor building footprint. And for the front, we actually set back plus or minus 16 feet. So I will be lying if I tell you you won't see the second floor. So the scale is slightly different, but when you look at the renderings or the proposed elevation, it's almost like a cousin, 1 story versus 2 story. But I think the overall design are very sensitive to the neighbors, and also by sharing the existing ground floor materials and finishes, for example, the terracotta tile roof and also stucco finish, the overall design is very similar to the original 1-story building. But of course, we have to prioritize all these visual information. So the front, of course, is the front. So we added a little bit more like terracotta tile at the front at the second floor. Now the height encroachment onto the 30-foot requirement or threshold, I have to make it clear that it's only 11 inches at the top, at the very top of the second floor. And of course, we don't want to express the front of the second floor as just a plainer addition. So I made a decision to extend the roof tile 12 feet from the second floor front plane, so that when you look from the side, you will still see more or less the terracotta tiles. Now, in terms of the parking structure, it could be considered as one of the most drastic change from demolishing the existing fully detached so-called 2-car garage. It's basically 18 feet by 18 feet. To become a fully detached garage, I think mostly there are 2 reasons. One is the structural condition of the existing fully detached garage is pretty dilapidated. There's no connection between the roof and the wall to the foundation, and the concrete slab is completely cracked. So we went back and forth, but we made a decision that, well, it also makes sense for young family with young kids, if they have a fully detached garage during rainy day, or even, well, you guys know how hot it could be in Burlingame. So it just makes sense functionally for them to have a fully attached garage. Now, we went back and looked at the context on both sides of the street. 9 out of 19 of the houses on the northern side of the street have the detached garage. And just to give you a sense of the scale of the street, there are only 2 1-story structure on the north side of the block. There are 5 single-story structure on the southern side. And of course, we're not trying to be the developer or maximize all the building envelope or height and ceiling height, but I think the overall design is very sensitive to the neighbors, and I appreciate that the owner also took initiative and talked to the neighbors on the left and also on the right. Sounds like they are verbally in support to what we are trying to do, unless one of the commissioner talk to the neighbor, unless we have surprises. So basically that's it, and I'm here for any questions.
Great, thank you, sir. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Pfaff?
Hi, yeah, I'm looking at your, what's left of the landscape, what you are not removing. And I see sort of an undecided on something called a cabbage palm, which I've just looked it up. It looks actually really quite nice. Seems like it would go with the house. So are you committing to keeping it, or what do you, and if you're not keeping it, looks like, I don't think you have very much greenery back there. You have the fig in the front, but I was just curious what the plan was.
Oh, thank you for the question. I would like to clarify, there's no protected trees to be removed. I think there may be some discrepancy on, I think you're referring to number 6, based on the staff report on drawings L1, existing shrub label number 6 are going to stay. So
Okay.
we're not going to remove it.
So that's a palm. It's looking like it's sort of a palm tree. I mean, I couldn't get in the back there. It's raised, but is that, it says cabbage palm. Is it, it's like a palm tree?
Not really. It's ordinary. So similar to palm tree, I'm no landscape architect or arborist, but we are going to keep it for sure.
But it has some height, I guess is my point.
That is correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, thank you. So my questions are in regards to the pitched roof that you have on the, I'm looking at it from the southeast elevation. The area in front of, excuse me, in front of the new attached garage. So is the reason that you didn't extend the pitched portion of that roof, are you just over the stairwell area? Is the reason for not extending that, are you just trying to minimize how much of the roof is violating that 30 foot, or what's the reason for not extending that pitch portion over the stairwell?
Thank you for the question. Basically, 2 reasons. One, it's not randomly stopping at that. Basically, that's the footprint of the master suite. So it's a structurally and logical place to terminate the pitch roof per se. But you guessed it right. We are trying to be very extremely sensitive when it comes to the height. So we could easily take the terracotta roof all the way to the back. That's the number 1 reason. And the number 2 reason is potentially we may add PV panel onto the roof. And relatively speaking, the flat roof will be a lot more forgiving when it comes to installing the PV panels.
Understood. Yeah, I just think that you have an opportunity for sort of a natural break or a natural change in the architectural massing if that slope portion extended over the stairwell, because then your massing sort of, it has that notch over the garage and then sort of changes in form. And it just sort of finishes off the architecture a little bit better in my mind, because I'm struggling a little bit in terms of integrating the boxes that are on top with the 2nd story mass. I get the fact that it's already an existing house, traditional Spanish style that would have been done in its day, where it's not all, it's sort of the decorated front with the terracotta tile roof in the front and then flat roofs towards the rear. And I think that can still work. It just seems that it's a sort of an odd stopping point, particularly along that side elevation. And it just, in my mind, and I'm just one voice, but in my mind, it would work a little bit better if it went back to that point at which it changed planes and then turned on that 2nd floor. So yeah, thank you for dialoguing that. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I had the same question about the roof, and I actually was wondering why it didn't go all the way back. It just seems like it would be a good architectural feature, but I'll just go with the answers that Commissioner Tronis got. My other question was on the southeast side again. What was the reason for demoing the breakfast nook and the garden window element at that point? they seemed to me to sort of break that side up. The way they looked on site looked good. So I was wondering why you were getting rid of those. Is it because of the square footage or?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. I think it will have to do with the driveway. In order for the owner to maneuver in and out into the proposed attached garage, it's an unfortunate, but if you look at the overall style of the existing house, those elements were kind of added on later on. So that's the main reason to answer your question.
You have about, am I reading this correctly, that to the main body of the house to the property line, you have 16 feet?
Correct.
And those popped out about what, a foot or so? That nook on the existing, or maybe even a couple. I don't know. There's no dimension on it.
It's I can answer.
Yeah, it looks like it scales about 2
feet.
Okay.
And then with existing breakfast nook there, they have 2 casement windows.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, well, we can keep, let's say we can keep the nook, and then in order to operate the window, it's just.
I would agree with that. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, so bear with me. Forgive me if you answered this in your very thorough explanation at the first. You talked about a lot of things. One thing that strikes me as that I don't quite understand, and it has to do with what somebody called the box on top a minute ago. Why is the second floor box pushed back away from the parapet wall to create that sort of what looks like it ought to be a walkway on the roof, but it's not being used for anything? What keeps the box from being pulled up flush against the back of that parapet wall so that the tile ends there and doesn't sit on top of the parapet wall? What's the thinking about that little walkway on the roof? Is there a reason that you held the second floor box back?
Are you referring to, for example, sheet drawing A1.3?
Well,
so that
I'm looking at it in a yeah, you can, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. So, yeah.
There were discussion early on in the design process that, well, how high we could optimize the ceiling height at the front of the existing house. So it went back and forth. Okay, that's one reason we want to maximize the ceiling height there. When you look at the proposed ceiling height of both levels, once again, we're not trying to optimize or maximize the height, if you will. We could easily go and put up a fight with you guys and, oh, you know what, ground floor should be higher, like 10-foot ceiling, but we didn't do that. There's not particular reason to set it back per se, but we were a little bit conservative when it comes to the height, especially a one-story building. You're adding a second story on top. How the neighbor will perceive and how you guys will perceive, that's a big question mark. And in terms of square footage, I think the owner is happy with what we have. We kind of max out the allowable FAR. I think personally, if you step back more so that you see or perceive the ground floor more, in a sense, okay, is it a drastic change? Relatively speaking, hopefully it's not. That's the whole reason.
I think, thank you for that. I think that's in fact the issue that I'm having is the project walks this very fine line. We get projects every once in a while where it looks like another house has been built behind the existing house. And this project is walking a very fine line. It almost looks as though another building has been built behind the original building and care has not been taken to integrate the two. And my intuition would have told me if that box on the second floor pulls up and the tile roof that's sloping away is flashed into that wall, it looks more like a single house and it's more integrated. That's why as I say, it's walking a very fine line. There's some really interesting things going on, but it does have a little bit of that house behind the house problem that comes up every once in a while for us. And we generally raise that issue and put a little pressure to try to integrate the architecture more. So, but I understand what you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
May I respond to?
Sure.
Oh, it's kind of like the previous project. We try not to create wedding cake kind of scenario. And that's why if you look at the right side of the house, we have a coplanar vertical wall going from ground floor to second floor.
Okay. Commissioner Say?
Yes, thank you. I am wondering, not trying to tell you how to design the house, but on the front elevation, I'm struggling a little bit with how kind of flat that second story is looking, that the face of it. And also with the fact that you're just barely penetrating that building height limitation and requiring that special permit application. And I'm just wondering if you thought about designing the roof a little bit different there, where you're almost mimicking the first floor. So you kind of have a gable over the master bedroom windows, kind of centered around the master bedroom windows. And I know you're maxed out on your square footage, where you either like push the master bedroom out a tiny bit and pull the bathroom back a tiny bit, just to have a little bit of articulation, so that you could put a similar roof pattern on the lower floor, on the second floor, and then eliminate the building height issue and add a little bit more interest to that second story front elevation. Looks like were you considering that? You're nodding your head.
Well, thank you for your wondering, because we did think about that. But I think, like what I said earlier, the existing ground floor image or imagery has been there for so long. Okay, so if you have to pick the fight, okay, second floor, more visual information, or ground floor, more information, you prioritize it, right? But when you think about Spanish architecture, it's almost minimum in a way, not even trim, not even a light fixture. So if you compare the existing and the proposed ground floor, the only thing we did is like, okay, maybe a couple decorative attic vent element, if you will, or maybe 5 more sconces, if you will. And once again, yeah, the second floor roof form, we could remake it to have the same slope facing the front. But then I feel like that we're trying to do too much, in a sense that, or maybe you could argue, oh, you are completely like one of the commissioners saying that the ugly child of becoming the second floor. But I think the ground floor imagery has been there for, I don't know how many years, 60 years, 70 years. People associate that look. It will be easier for them to comprehend the modification, if you will.
Okay, yeah, I'm just making a suggestion. I'm just telling you where I'm seeing, I'm struggling a little bit with that second story front elevation. So just wanted to pass that on to you. But I had I think there's some drafting elements that I wanted to get clarified. There seems to be some windows that are missing in your elevations that are, I believe, on the floor plan. On the floor plan, some of the windows show very clearly, and in other areas is kind of haloed in. So I'm not exactly sure if you intended to have a window, but on the right elevation, where there actually seems to be a fairly blank front and rear side of the second story, I think, wait, let me see, that's the right elevation. Make sure I'm looking at the right elevation. Left, maybe it's the left elevation. No, it's the right elevation. It seems like there's a window missing from the bathroom that looks like it's in plan, but it's not on the elevation. Likewise in, I think bathroom number 3, there's a window on the plan that's not showing up on the elevation. So I'm just wanted you to, in the next go around, maybe clarify all your window locations on your elevations or where you intend them to be, and to show us all your proposed windows.
Yes, I can certainly double check.
And I think, yeah, that in the garage, there's a window missing in plan, but I think there's one in the elevation at the back of the garage.
Well, I can certainly double check.
Okay. And then is it, looking in plan again at the entrance to the garage, looks like you have kind of, it's, the garage door is centered between the exposed surface of the front garage, the front face of the garage. It's not reflected that way on the front elevation. Almost looks like you're going to be driving along the side of the house to park the car into the garage. So I think it's just like a little drafting element. You need to take a look at where that left side of the garage door interfaces with the
Okay.
garage.
Yeah, we can double check.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. That gets us to the end of our commissioners' questions. I'm going to look out into the audience and see if there's anybody in the public that wishes to speak at this time. If you do, raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any electronic communication for this one, Director Gardner?
No, Mr. Chair, no emails.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, come back to the commissioners. Comments? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I had a similar response to what Commissioner Loftus was indicating. In terms of the massing of that second floor, I made notes to myself that it was poorly integrated, and that's why I was gravitating towards, how the tile roof is articulated or extended on that right side. Unfortunately, I think we have an issue in which, there's a basic program that the homeowners are trying to achieve, but by attaching that garage, they've now lost the benefit of having the sort of bonus square footage that you get from having a detached garage. And then when you do that, you're very constrained in terms of how much of your second floor addition can actually be used to sort of articulate itself and integrate itself better with the first floor. Nonetheless, I don't think we can just ignore that issue. And so, I started sketching or thinking to myself that a better solution would be to integrate and have that second floor addition sort of come forward and embrace that front facade. I don't think it would harm the elevation or harm create an impact to neighbors to any extent, as the architect is concerned about. But I think it would integrate better with the overall house. I agree that, yes, there's something nice about having that facade on the right side continue up and not just become a layer cake of a box stuck on top of that second floor. But I think that the roof needs to integrate a little bit better, and rather than just be a token gesture of a sloped roof on that second floor, I think it needs to just work better to help integrate the second floor addition and not look like another house slammed up onto the back of the existing. Otherwise, I think that the applicant and the architect are doing a very sincere job of trying to work with the existing and maintain the existing Spanish style house. I think that that's great and that's commendable. I think that the windows have good scale. I can make the findings for the special permit for height because of the slope of the property. I think that the overall height of the house itself from adjacent finished grade is not excessive. So I could make those findings, and I could make the special permit for the attached garage relative to the context of the pattern in the neighborhood. But again, that attached garage is creating square footage that then has to be counted towards their FAR. So anyway, that's the balance that they have to try to figure out. But that's sort of always the puzzle when you have that square footage issue. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Loftus.
Well, Commissioner Toronis just did all of my work for me, and I think that that's the real problem, is the integration of the second floor with the first floor. It does feel like a house behind a house, and I think it needs to be addressed. Other than that, I think it's a nice, simple addition, frankly. And I'll close by saying that the landscaping in this front yard along that sidewalk is one of my favorite landscapes in the city during the summertime. It's just spectacular. I walk by it a lot walking the dog, and it's really nice with the stone wall and the planting in front of the stone wall and the yard and stuff draping over is just really nice. So well done on that. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Gall.
Well, I haven't seen the front yard in the summer, but I have done second story additions. I hope that the front yard doesn't get too trashed, because that tends to happen. But as Rush Limbaugh listeners used to say, mega dittos on the second story comments. I just think it needs to be integrated better with the first floor. But one of the things that I'm struggling with is, I know it kind of cleans things up or flattens things out to me, is that nook removal. I thought that looked really well when I looked over the gate. It looks good. I mean, it breaks up that side, and then you've got that side door with the arbor over it. It's very nice. And so if you can integrate some of those elements, maybe even keep one of those pop outs, I think it would help the overall design, and it might help to bring that second floor and first floor together.
Great. Commissioner Pfaff.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I've been looking at this for a while and trying to figure out what is it that's not quite going together. And I do understand what the architect's saying about the Spanish. I live very near a bunch of these authentic ones, and they have often that their second story is extremely simple, very pared down. Sometimes there's no roof at all. It's like a tar and gravel on the top, and maybe they're actually split levels. I don't know. But I was just wondering, he's over by, did he say 11 inches? Do you need to be over 11 inches? What would happen if that got pushed down? And the second question, you don't have to do it. I was just wondering, it might look more together. The other thing I'm looking at, it looks like almost like poured moldings below the windows on the new section, as well as perhaps an added poured thing on this, a poured sill on the old section of one window. But those aren't real typical either. I mean, in my neighborhood, they tend to be also very spar, like they're metal windows usually, and very simple, and they don't have these fancy sills. So I'm just wondering, maybe you really like the sill and you want to have them, but I'm just saying, to help make it all go better together, maybe those aren't necessary. I don't know, maybe it would look like it all kind of flowed better if it was just spar, like, I don't know if this word, like pared down a little bit. And I completely agree with the comment about that Darling Bay or whatever, the two in the back. If you can find a way to somehow rebuild that or make one work, I just love that. So I think it's great. And thank you for saving one of our little gems here. They usually are completely plowed over, and it would be really lovely to see this one stay. So thank you for doing that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm struggling with the integration of the first and the second floor, and largely because the second floor is really so narrow. I wonder if it wouldn't be an opportunity to extend a wall to the left, not necessarily a room, but just a wall. You know, if you look at some of the Spanish architecture, sometimes the facades are wider just because they've put a garden wall or, a swoop off to the side. But something to maybe start to take away the verticalness of that as it sits on top. Because, I'd like to see the garage integrated. I feel like it's just a box that's popped in. And I get it, and I get the program and what everybody's saying, but we're still not integrating. And so I think that there needs to be some thought on how you could integrate without necessarily changing square footage and adding some detail that helps us, sell it a little bit better as an integrated second story. So there's more than a few ways to track at that. And I'm just trying to offer a way that I'm sure nobody else is trying to think of, because it's definitely a weird way to do it, but maybe an opportunity. As I doodled on his drawing. But anyway, that was my biggest concern about this project, is the integration. I think it's a nice, clean project now, and I like the house now. And I think the additional add, and there's a nice little grouping there. But it's just straight up box sitting on top. And I think, as Vice Chair Loftus has said, sitting it back is really actually going to make it worse, because it's not going to be integrated with that tile roof on the first floor either. So opportunities there. We have an opportunity to make a motion to bring this back if we're feeling confident that it can be done.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we bring this back on regular action. I'm pretty confident, given the dialogue we've had with the applicant, that this can be worked out. There's some skill there, and there's some very nuanced thinking, and I think this can be integrated and brought back.
I'll second that.
And I personally, for me, the height thing isn't a big deal. That's not what's killing me here, because I recognize, DeSoto, like many of the streets up in the hills there, you have a lot of properties that are not hitting the regular heights. So that's not something we should be fearful of. I think the bigger thing is how to better integrate. So, okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus, and I believe that was a second by Commissioner Taranis.
Yes.
Okay, then let's vote on that.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Foss,
Aye.
Commissioner Taranis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Loftus,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Okay. Now that, let's see, 9F has been postponed to another meeting. So that concludes our design review study. And moving on to commissioners' reports. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to directors' reports.
So Chair Schmidt, we do not have any FYIs. And in fact, the council meeting on February 22nd did not have any planning related items. So there is not a director's report for that meeting.
Great. Okay, then that brings us to item number 12, adjournment. So thank you all for this evening. I think we got through a whole bunch of projects.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
You guys.
Night.